he a mere unimportant piece of driftwood floating in the vast ocean of the universe? Could there be life similar to our own on other planets? Is it not possible that atmospheric conditions of relative environments control their shapes and forms? If so, would they be giants, or could perhaps the opposite be true? Could their intellect have reached a scientific level far above man's dreams? What then will the future reveal?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're watching PNT. I'm your host, fully functional and anatomically correct. Up front this week, according to an article published by the Huffington Post, one Florida man might have taken things just a tad too literally when responding to a spat with his neighbor. 30-year-old Brian Stewart, a resident of Milton, Florida, was arrested by the Santa Rosa PD after he assaulted two neighbors with a machete. The unwitting targets had knocked on Stewart's door after putting up with loud yelling and banging from the house all day. Stewart answered the door and stepped onto the porch, raising a sharp machete with the word kindness written on it. Stewart attacked, intending to kill his neighbors with, well, you know. One of the victims stepped in front of the other, raising his arm to block the monogrammed machete, suffering a half-inch cut to his left hand in the process, but saving his friend. Smelling strongly of alcohol, Stewart had to be stunned with a taser before being momentarily subdued. The sword-wielding souse apparently wasn't done yet, however, and had to be shackled after kicking and banging his head on the inside of the patrol car. Stewart has been booked with a $10,000 bail on charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and aggravated battery. Kindness was taken into evidence, and PNT cannot help but point out the irony that kindness will most likely not be kind during the prosecution of its owner. Pandora, no doubt, would be proud. From wacky weapons to maelstrom mail deliveries, our next story in our weekly roundup of the weird takes us to Missouri, where one postal worker had the kind of day certain to make you feel better about yours. Footage taken by Northland resident Brian Riley shows a postal delivery truck explode into flames, rolling down the street in what looks like an action sequence from an overblown and overhyped Marvel movie. The unfortunate postman had already gotten stuck in the snow and was attempting to free the vehicle, and was far too aggressive with the gas pedal, revving the engine for over 10 minutes straight without stopping. With the driver and the truck's temperature rising, the engine pulled a coup de grace on its abuser when it overheated and burst into flames. The lucky letter carrier dove to the side of the truck, escaping without serious injury, but with some serious explaining to do. For PNT's part, we cannot help but note the irony that while the Postal Service's creed might mention snow, heat, rain, and dark of night, it apparently fails to cover hotheads with a lead foot. For the final part of our weekly roundup of the weird, PNT is pleased to bring you a fresh UFO sighting taken from the MUFON database. Occurring on January the 21st in Bend, Oregon, the footage appears to show a pair of reddish-orange orbs moving and hovering over the Oregon skies. Let's have a look at what is probably the most meta piece of footage we've ever seen.
What all of this?
Nah, that one looks like an airplane.
Oh.
I don't know, it's just sitting there.
549. Actually, I don't know if it's...
A policy of secrecy.
That light's just sitting there, honey. Get your cell phone.
Are destined to remain forever locked away. August 3rd, 2010. A UFO sighting in the skies over Whiteman Air
It's a
Force
circular
Base, Missouri.
light.
A father of two goes to investigate.
And there's another light beside it.
He and his oldest son went and camped out on the side of the hill. They had a wide open sky and a view of the town and Whiteman Air Force Base.
And what they noticed was two military jets. Looks like they're about to land, but instead of landing, they circle around the base like they're searching or chasing something.
And then a dark triangular shape.
So what were the objects caught on tape by one Oregon couple last Monday? Let's run down the possible explanations. First, let's get rid of the obvious. I don't know about you, but these don't look like birds, clouds, stars, or planes to me. Which, as regular viewers will already know, brings us to balloons. Balloons, especially larger ones that have been lighted, are a distinct possibility in this case, and the larger orb could be easily replicated in this way. For PNT, however, this explanation seemed a tad too easy and doesn't fit all of what we see. There are the secondary objects to consider, the squiggle on the left side of the frame during the beginning of the film, and the smaller orb that seems to be an orbit of the larger object. It was, in fact, these smaller objects that led us to the eventual solution. But before we get to that, let's keep running down the list, shall we? Drones would be the next likeliest culprit, which could explain the smaller objects, but not the larger, due to the size and luminosity of the object. Now, keep in mind, as we have previously covered, drones can now be easily fitted with high-intensity LED lights of virtually any color or pattern display. In this case, though, the sheer size of the larger sphere would make this more unlikely. Well, alright then, PNT. How about a combination of lighted balloon and drones? Wouldn't that take care of it? Well, yes and no. While it's certainly within the realm of possibility, it would take some skill to coordinate the distance between the larger and the smaller orbs. The drone would have to maintain an equal relative distance to the balloon, rising with it in synchronization as is seen in the end of the clip. So, possible, but unlikely due to the KISS principle, which essentially means that the more complex a solution, the less likely it is to be the correct one. Keep it simple, stupid. So, with a balloon-drone combo being iffy, where do we go next? As is always the case in these reports, there exists the possibility of military test craft or maneuvers. On the whole, the US military has not exactly been open about its prototypes, and for good reason. The need for security, however, does make for a fertile breeding ground for speculation. That secret military initiatives have and do exist is without question. The pertinent matter is why. Why test secret craft over major population centers where they can be easily seen and filmed? Even for the military, this seems a stretch. So, what about the more radical possibilities? That these could be either extraterrestrial or even perhaps interdimensional craft come to visit Earth for reasons that are their own. To the open mind, there will always exist the knowledge that our understanding of the universe is finite, and that in order to keep an open mind, we must not only consider the explanations that challenge science, but also the truths that hard data and the scientific method can bring us. In this case, PNT has found that the solution to this particular event is more of the mundane than of the fantastic. As we mentioned earlier, it was the two smaller objects that led to the solution. Let's take them individually. First, the object on the left side of the frame during the beginning of the tape is nothing more than a lens flare. One can easily see that the orb moves with the motions of the camera, which cause the squiggly lines that are often mistaken for rapid movements of a UFO. And it is worth noting that the witnesses are not wrong in that the objects taken for orbs or lights do move rapidly. It's simply that the witness is providing the motion themselves unless a tripod is used. Also supporting that this is a lens flare is the fact that the witness himself states that he placed his cell phone against the window and recorded what he thought was only one object. This is proof positive a lens flare or camera artifact, which is one of the most common statements found in reports of this type. Quote, "We were recording and didn't notice the orb object UFO until later when we were looking at the footage." The reason why the witnesses never see these orbs while recording is because the artifacts are a reflection on the lens or sensor of the camera itself. The camera is capturing the reflection, but your naked eye is not. This is similar in principle to the Pepper's Ghost used by Disney to create the dancing spooks in the Haunted Mansion. Likewise, the green orbs found in photos are actually spots of overexposure caused by too much light on the camera's sensor. In short, the sunlight blinds the sensor in that spot, similar to the effect that happens when you stare at a bright light for too long. So, with the first rapidly moving UFO explained, let's turn our attention to the second light orbiting the larger. PNT must admit to some frustration at first attempting to find a cause for this light, but it was in studying both the movements of the twin orbs and the background structures visible after our filters were applied that we found our culprit. Another lens flare. Wait, PNT. Seriously? That thing is way larger than the smaller orb. Look, I can buy that's a lens flare, the first one, but this? Come on. Well, we can understand your disbelief, faithful viewers, but allow us to explain. Note that as the smaller planet moves closer and away from the larger light, watch the beam and post to the right-hand side of the video. PNT went frame by frame after marking the positions of both and discovered that for each back and forth movement of the smaller orb, the post and beam would move exactly the same corresponding amount. A subtle change, but definitely measurable. There is one other telling clue. The smaller of the two orbs vanishes just before the orbs move behind the edge of the eaves. This is a clear indication that the larger orb is in fact the light source for the second. Were they two separate physical objects, they would both be seen passing the edge as they rose. This is not the case, with only the larger object of the two showing a clean edge as it moves upwards. Ha! You say. Got you, PNT. What about that movement? What's causing that? Well, any number of things. If it were a lighted balloon, someone letting out slack on the line, for example. But that's not what's going on here, and that very movement, as well as the ruling out of the smaller objects as lens flares, was a final clue and confirmation of the actual cause. The moon. I know, but bear with us. After PNT had eliminated the lens flares, the question remained as to what the hell the larger object could be. On a hunch, and after looking at the movement rate of the larger orb, we searched for the moon phases for January 21st, 2019 in Bend, Oregon. We found that during the time in question, the moon was at full. Moreover, the time of moonrise on the 21st was 5:55 p.m., within minutes of the witness reported time of 5:49 p.m. These two facts alone are conclusive enough, but PNT still could not account for the bright fiery red appearance of the object, until we discovered that January 21st was also the date of an extremely rare lunar event, the super blood wolf moon eclipse, during which the moon is at its closest point to Earth, causing it to appear 10 to 16% larger than normal. The reddish color is caused by the total lunar eclipse, an event when the sun, Earth, and moon align. As the sunlight passes through Earth's atmosphere from behind, it colors the moon a bright crimson color, thus the term blood moon. For the final nail in the coffin, the extraordinary lunar event ended at roughly 1 a.m. on the evening of January 21st, putting the recording squarely at the same time as the peak of the event and leaving little doubt that this is what the witnesses recorded. Which leads us to a curious question. Given the extraordinarily meta nature of the recording, witnesses literally recording a UFO sighting while listening to a show about UFOs, it begs one to wonder at the anomalies in the witnesses' statement. How is it possible that the witnesses did not recognize the moon, even in such a rare state? How is it possible that their claim of the objects having vanished when the witness went outside could be true? One would hope that this is a case of an inexperienced witness misidentifying a common celestial object under unusual circumstances. But let's face it, this smacks of a deliberate attempt to pass off footage of the blood moon as a UFO. Perhaps hoping to attract the attention of less thorough channels, and perhaps hoping to earn their 15 minutes of fame in an endless stream of questionable videos that are either deliberate hoaxes, CGI creations of art students, or the misidentification of common natural phenomenon sold to the willing, but predominantly uneducated fanboys that frequent channels designed to take advantage of this ignorance, rather than bother with the more thankless task of helping them to become better observers and, in return, better witnesses to those events that truly are extraordinary and unexplainable. But whether or not the objects caught on tape hovering and moving over the Oregon skies last Monday were simply a recording of a rare lunar event, a secret military test craft, or something else entirely, we'll leave it up to our viewers to decide. Sound off in the comment section below with your thoughts. That's it for this time, faithful viewers. Be sure to click like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified when PNT presents your next portion of the paranormal. I'm your host, reminding you to keep an open mind, because a closed one shuts out the truth.